Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and hi my friends. As we have started the series of eye and now we have reached to the chapter cornea and its different disorders. Okay. So before understanding different disorders of the cornea, we should have the basic knowledge of the structure of cornea. Okay. So before we will discuss the structure and then we will move on to the disorders. So what is cornea? Cornea, it is a thin transparent structure which form interior 1/6 portion of the outermost layer of the eye. So for example, we noted this is the outermost layer of the eye which is sclera. Okay. So the interior 1/6 portion of this outermost layer, it is formed by a transparent thin structure which is called cornea. Okay. This is cornea. Now diameters. The interior corneal diameter, the interior horizontal diameter, it is up to about 12 millimeter. The interior vertical diameter, it is 11.5 millimeter. And the posterior corneal diameter, it is about 11.7 millimeter. Why it is important to understand these diameters? This is because there are some problems for which we should have the knowledge of these diameters. For example, such as in microphthalmia, megalocornea, sclerocornea. So if we do not know the diameters, we will not understand the different pathologies of cornea. Okay. Now the thickness. Okay, so the cornea is thinnest in its center. In its center, it is the thinnest. Okay, when we move to the periphery, its thickness is increases. In the center, its thickness is from 0.5 to 0.54 millimeter. As we move to the periphery, its thickness is increases from, it is up to about 6.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter. Okay, so the cornea is the thinnest in its center. Why the thickness is important? This is because for understanding different pathologies, such as it is important in the diagnosis of primary open angle glaucoma. It is important for keratoglobus, keratoconus. Okay, so the thickness is also important for understanding and diagnosis of different pathologies of the eye. Okay, so this is the thickness. Now, what are the radius of curvatures? The radius of curvature is, for example, if this is the cornea, okay, if this is the cornea, and I draw an imaginary circular line to make the cornea circular, okay, so that this will be the center will be the radius, and if we take the distance from the posterior surface and interior surface, these are called radius of curvatures. So the interior radius of curvature, this is the interior radius of curvature and this is the posterior radius of curvature. The interior radius of curvature, it is up to about 7.8 millimeter. The interior, okay, and the posterior radius of curvature is about 6.2 to 6.8 millimeter. Okay, 6.2 to 6.8 millimeter. Why it is important like the diameters and thickness? As when we implant intraocular lens in cataract, so for the implantation of intraocular lens, we have to measure the power of the lens. So in order to measure the power of the lens, we should know the interior radius of curvature. Okay, so it is also important for the treatment. So these were the diameter, thickness and the radius of curvatures. Now we know that the cornea is a powerful natural lens. Okay, it is convex in its interior surface and it is concave in its posterior surface. So it will have power. The interior convex surface, it has a power of about plus 48 diopters, and the posterior concave surface, it has minus 5 diopter power. Okay, so the average power becomes plus 43 diopters. It is a powerful natural lens. Okay, diopters. So this is the power of the cornea. Now we should also understand the histological structure of the cornea. Cornea is made up of mainly 5 layers. The first layer is the epithelium. Okay, the epithelium. This epithelium is a non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium which is made up of about 5 to 7 layers of cells. Okay, so the first one layer, it is mainly a basal cell layer. It is a single layer of basal cells and which are columnar in nature. So a single layer of basal cells which is columnar. Over this basal cell we have 2 to 3 layers of wing cells. Okay, 2 to 3 layers of wing cells. And over these wing cells we have 2 layers of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. And this 2 layers of non-stratified keratinized squamous epithelium, it also contains cilia. And these cilia, they are in contact with the tears. Okay, so this is the epithelium. The first layer is epithelium. The next layer, this bluish layer, this is Bowman's layer. And Bowman's layer, it is actually the superficial avascular structure of the stroma. This is the superficial layer of the stroma which is avascular and which acts as a basement membrane for the epithelium. Okay, so this is the Bowman's layer. It is about 8 to 14 millimeter micrometer thick. Okay, 8 to 14 micrometer thick. And the epithelium, this epithelium layer which has 7 layers of cells, it is 50 micrometer thick. Okay, it is 50 micrometer thick. The Bowman layer is 8 to 14 micrometer thick. Okay, then we have the stroma. Stroma is the thickest part of the cornea which makes about 90% of the thickness of cornea. Okay, stroma. Stroma contains collagen fibrils, and between these collagen fibrils we have keratocytes. These are the cells. Keratocytes are the cells which produces these collagen fibrils and the ground substance. So in between these collagen fibrils, they are properly oriented and arranged. So in between these properly oriented collagen fibrils, we have the keratocytes. And these keratocytes, actually these collagen fibrils, they are produced by these keratocytes which act as a fibroblast. Okay, for these collagen fibrils. And the red lines, these are the ground substance which is also produced by these keratocytes. Okay, so this is the stroma which makes 90% of the thickness of cornea. This is the third layer. Okay, the fourth layer, this black, the fourth layer is the Descemet membrane. Okay, Descemet membrane which is up to about 10 to 12 micrometer thick. Okay, 10 to 12 micrometer thick. Okay, this Descemet membrane, it acts as a basement membrane for the underlying endothelium. Okay, and it is 10 to 12 micrometer thick. Now we have the last layer. Which is the endothelium. Endothelium is basically, it is a single layer of hexagonal cells. Okay, which act to maintain the transparency of the cornea by removing the extra fluid from the cornea. So this single layer of hexagonal cells, it acts as a pump and it removes the extra fluid from the cornea and maintain its transparency. Okay, so this is the last layer. The first one is the epithelium, the second is the Bowman's layer, the third is the stroma, the fourth is the Descemet membrane, and the fifth one is a single layer of hexagonal cells which is called endothelium. Remember all these cell layers, when they are damaged, they cannot regenerate, except the epithelium, which is regenerated by the limbal stem cells, and the stroma. The stroma is regenerated by these keratocytes, and these keratocytes will produce these collagen fibrils and ground substance. So, except the epithelium and the stroma of the cornea, when these all layers, when these are damaged, they cannot regenerate. Okay. So this is the histological structure of the cornea. Now the blood supply. We know that the cornea, it is an avascular structure. So posteriorly it is supplied by the aqueous humor, and interiorly it is supplied by the tears. Okay. So, and one more thing, this circumcorneal region, as it is near to the blood supply of the conjunctiva, so this circumcorneal region, it is supplied by the circumcorneal vessels of the cornea. Okay. The nerve supply to the cornea comes from the long ciliary nerves. Okay, the branch of trigeminal nerve, ophthalmic nerve. Okay. So the nerve supply is from the long ciliary nerves. How the corneal transparency is maintained? As it has the collagen fibrils, it has so much layers, up to 5 layers. So how the transparency is maintained? This is maintained by the proper orientation of the epithelial cells, the proper arrangement and orientation of epithelial cells, endothelial cells, and most importantly, the proper orientation of these collagen fiber layers and the keratocytes. So if there is any problem with these collagen fibrils in their orientation and arrangement, so it will cause the opacity in the cornea. Okay. So the transparency is maintained by the pumping system of the endothelium, by the proper arrangement of epithelium, and by the proper arrangement and orientation of collagen fibrils and keratocytes. What is the function of cornea? We know that cornea is a powerful natural lens which has a average power of plus 43 diopters. Okay. Now this is the basic dimension and structure of the cornea. Okay, the nerve supply, the blood supply. Now we will discuss a little bit the corneal diseases and its classification. Okay, so the corneal diseases can be classified into keratitis, keratopathies, congenital diseases. Okay, and the last is that for all these problems we have surgeries for the cornea which are called keratoplasties. Okay, so the surgical procedure for the cornea, these are called keratoplasties. Keratitis, it is when this cornea is inflamed, so the inflammation of the cornea is called keratitis. Okay, inflammation is called keratitis. It can be infective or non-infective. Infective, for example, this keratitis can be caused by bacteria, by the fungi, by the viral and protozoa. Okay, the non-infective keratitis, it is caused by allergic and autoimmune conditions. Keratopathies, it is a broad term, as the keratitis means the inflammation of cornea, but keratopathies involve many other disorders of the cornea. For example, if there is problem in the cornea due to eyelid abnormalities, due to vitamin A deficiencies, due to protein deficiencies, due to exposure, so this is keratopathies. It is a broad term for the disorders of the cornea. Okay. And we have, at the last of this chapter, we will discuss congenital disorders of the cornea, which is anophthalmia, when the eyeball is missing. When there is no eyeball, it is called anophthalmia. Microphthalmia, when the eyeball is abnormally small. Okay. Megalocornea, when the cornea, as I told you before, that why we should understand the diameter. In megalocornea, the corneal length the cornea will enlarge. Okay, it will enlarge. And sclerocornea, in sclerocornea, the sclera, it will overlap over the cornea. Okay, Okay, so these are the different disorders. We will discuss these different disorders, their pathologies, their diagnosis and treatment in the upcoming lectures. Okay, I also have prepared notes. I will get the link in the description. You can take a look from the notes and can learn more. Thank you for watching the video.